slide off. Media centers, where you're going to have set up staging for media so that they can have their question answered. It's a big deal because you don't want media just rushing into areas that are unsafe. So having media centers set up is key. Transportation, are you going to have transportation to get evacuees out, get people out whose homes are damaged, get people out who need rescue? Do you have buses lined up? Do you have vans lined up? Do you have churches and shelters available? For us, it's usually one of the high schools in our area that they set up with that have backup generators. That's usually a shelter for people who have been stranded during blizzards and hurricanes. We've had remnants of Hurricane Katrina come through, leaving tornadoes. We don't get as many of those type of disasters, but we've had to do that in the past where I'm from. Search and rescue is anything from boat rescue, airlifting, canine search and rescue, canine bloodhounds. A lot of it, they'll be brought in typically right after the disaster struck, and they'll be searching rubble for survivors. During 9/11, that was a big thing with trying to find people when the towers fell. Quick shout out to the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office. So police people, I want to throw it in there. Recovery. So once the response stage is over, then it's when this recovery starts. And again, there's two phases. There's short-term recovery, and then there's the long-term. Short-term is try to get the community established, but there's financial restraints. This is where volunteers, nonprofit groups come into a big play. When a devastation area and you've got buildings that are destroyed, like you see in this picture, hey, please don't touch that. Please don't touch that. When you have disaster areas like this, getting power and having volunteers, having manpower, the federal government simply cannot do it. So they rely on volunteers, they rely on organizations such as the American Red Cross, God's Pit Crew, which donates toiletry items to people who are in an area that has been affected by hurricanes, such as toothbrushes, feminine products, so on and so forth. The Red Cross, they come in and aid people that have been put out. Other organizations such as that play a huge role in the recovery process. But one of the big issues with the recovery process is financial restraint, having to wait for that federal money to come into place. It's gotten better, so they declare states of emergency. Federal money starts pouring in as soon as the disaster ends. Recovery. So first thing we got to do is got to reestablish utilities, water, power. Get cleanup started. A lot of times, an area that's affected will send other power companies, will send people down to help aid get the power and utility lines back up. A big deal is debris removal. You got to get rid of all this excess debris from a disaster. How do you do that? You have trash trucks come in. You have different dump trucks come in, and they just start loading it up with big cranes and forklifts. Volunteers just start cleaning up, getting rid of it. Flood insurance. Insurance. Do you have the kind of insurance that covers your home? Do you have life insurance? Do you have the proper things? I know when 9/11 happened, a lot of the people that had life insurance didn't get paid out because that insurance was not, because those acts were deemed terrorism. Most insurance policies don't cover that. So do you have the proper insurance that if something happens, terrorist attack, your family will be covered? There are companies that do cover it, but the majority don't. Thanks. And this is a big deal. So with response, mental health recovery is huge. This is where the faith-based community can play a huge role. People are always asking, why did this happen to us? Why us? Why now? Crisis counseling, PTSD for first responders. It was noted that after 9/11, PTSD is usually referred to as something that soldiers get, but first responders, seeing all that tragedy, like at the Boston bombings, it's no different than a war zone. And first responders are in just as much need of counseling and to be aware of this as soldiers or the community members. Most of the time, these first responders in an area are from that community, and so they're trying to save people, but they're also seeing firsthand the place they live being destroyed and people they know dying, and it's hard for them to ask for help. Most try to be hard and upfront, but really they're struggling just as much as the next person. Identifying that and making sure mental health is key for them in a recovery phase. So faith-based community, having counselors available is huge. Chaplains can be huge. Some biblical insight. So throughout the Bible, it's all disasters and recovery, God pulling people out, bringing them back in. For preparedness, I felt this was appropriate. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Be watchful, stand firm in faith, act like men, be strong. Let all that do be done in love. So being prepared, having faith, I thought that kind of distinguished preparedness. Planning, Psalms 20, verse 4. May He grant you your heart's desire and fulfill all of your plans. Period. Make sure all your plans are fulfilled. Isaiah 41, verse 13. For I love the Lord your God. Hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not, I am the one who helps you. So, for responders, fear not, we are the ones who help you. God sends us to help you. Recovery, Jeremiah 30, verse 17. For I will restore health to you, and your wounds I will heal, declares the Lord. So throughout the Bible, it's bad thing happens, God lets you go out to pull you back in. Same with disasters and emergency management. The proper preparedness and planning and response, recovery, it's the same for over faith, hope, being prepared, and you can limit the disaster and ultimately, hopefully, help people rebuild and recover. Next. So in conclusion, emergency management, phases of mitigation, identifying problems, prevention. You identify a problem, you try to prevent them, being prepared. Okay, your National Weather Service is saying, we have a hurricane coming. What are you going to do to prepare for that? Flooding, wind, debris, nailing up, boarding up windows, etc. Response, how are we going to respond? Do we have enough boats? Do we have enough buses and things to transport people out? Response, recovery, okay, do we have the funds and proper equipment in place to start to clean up and so life can move on? Mental health for first responders, it's a big component. And then the biblical component, it's the same throughout. The Bible is emergency management, it's being prepared, and then when a disaster does happen, having the right plan in place and resiliency to recover. One other thing I want to point out is, another big conclusion is don't forget about those special needs community. They do the senior citizen community, senior citizen living centers. That is a big deal. So just making sure we take, as first responders, we take care of them before a storm or disaster happens is key. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much.